Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Arunachala Ramanaya. Today I'm going to talk about three verses of Guru Vācaka Kōvai. There are so many, Guru Vācaka Kōvai is so rich with so many important teachings. It's difficult to select verses, so I decided to start from the beginning. The first 18 verses are prefatory verses of one kind or another. So the Bhagavan's teachings really begin from verse 19. So today I'll talk about 19, 20, and 21. The chapter heading this comes under, the chapter is, I think, Ulahu Unmeterin or something. The reality of the world is what it means. But in many of the verses, he's pointing out that the world isn't actually real. However, in the first verse, he does say that the world is real, but it's real in one particular sense. The meaning of the verse is, since cause alone is seen as effect, and since Chinmayam, which is the cause of the vast world, which Shastras describe as mere names and forms, is palm-nelly real, save that the vast world is real. And that's the literal meaning. If we expand it a little, firstly, the first clause, karaname karyama kandalal, since cause alone is seen as effect. For people who are not familiar with Indian philosophy, this may seem a rather strange sentence because we don't usually think of the effect being, of the cause being seen as the effect. But to understand the reasoning behind it, it's important to understand in Indian philosophy, there are different types of cause are classified. The two principal causes are what are called in Sanskrit upadana karana and nimitta karana. Upadana karana literally means the appropriated cause. That is the material cause, the substance out of which something is made. And the nimitta karana means the efficient cause. And in Tamil, they also talk about a third cause, which is the tunne karanam, the auxiliary cause. That is the instrumental cause, we can say, the instruments that are used. So in the classic example of a pot, the upadana karana, or material cause of the pot, is clay. The efficient cause, or nimitta karana, is the potter. And the tunne karanam, or auxiliary cause or instrumental cause, is the potter's wheel. So when it is said cause alone is seen as effect, the cause that is being referred to is the upadana karana. That is the material cause, the substance of which the effect is made. So it is clay alone that is seen as a pot. It is gold alone that is seen as ornaments. It is wood alone that is seen as a table. So the table or the ornaments or the pot, these are all effects, they're karya. And the cause, the upadana karana, the material cause of these are respectively, the wood is the material cause of the table, the gold is the material cause of the ornaments, and the clay is the material cause of the pot. So it's this, when Bhagavan says, right, since cause alone is seen as effect, the cause he's referring to is the upadana karana. So that's the first clause. The second clause is, since Chinmayam, which is the cause of or cause for the vast world, which Shastra is described as mere names and forms, is palm nelly real. That's the literal meaning. Nelly is a Tamil term for the amalaka fruit. So this is referring to the classic example. If you want to say that something is very clear, you say it's as clear as an amalaka on the palm. So palm nelly real implies as it's real as clearly as a nelly fruit in the palm. So just like that means it's something very, very obvious, something that is clearly known to be real. What the word that Bhagavan uses is chinmayam. Chinmayam means what consists of or what is composed of awareness. So awareness is the one thing that is more clear than any other thing. That is, whatever we may consider to be clear, it's clear because we're aware of it. So the most obvious thing of all is awareness. So it is when it is said palm nelly real, that implies it is as clearly real as a nelly in the palm. In fact, it's far more clear than a nelly fruit in the palm. It's the most clear thing of all. So, and this chinmayam, he says, is the cause for the vast world. But it's the cause in the sense that it's the material of which this world is composed. The ultimate substance of all phenomena is the pure awareness that we actually are. So it's awareness alone that is being seen as all these as this vast universe, which Shastras describe as mere names and forms. So if we consider the substance of which all these things are made, then in that sense, it is appropriate to say that the vast world is real. Muruganar has given a paraphrase for this verse. The meaning of Muruganar's paraphrase is, since cause alone is seen as effect, and since Chaitanam, that's awareness, which is the cause for the vast world, which is described by Shastras as nama rupa matra, mere name and form, it's real, like an amalaka on the palm of the hand. So there are two since clauses. Since cause alone is seen as effect, and since Chaitanam is the cause, it's appropriate to say that the vast world is real. In other words, the world is real as awareness. The world is real as Brahman. The world is real as ourself. But as names and forms, it's not real. But what is seen as names and forms is only that Chaitana. So in the sense that this is like saying since it's the rope alone that is seen as a snake, and since the rope is real, therefore it's appropriate to say that the snake is real. That it's a parallel thing. But what it means, if we say the snake is real as a rope. It's unreal as a snake. So the implication here is that the world is real as awareness. It's unreal as names and forms. That's the implication. And Sadhu Om has also given a paraphrase which substantially means the same. And what Sadhu Om explains in a note is, this world is described by Shastras as being name and form. We may say that both this name and form are the effect of Brahman, the cause. Among the 5 aspects of Brahman, namely Sat, Chit, Ananda, Nama, Rupa, in other words, being, awareness, happiness, name and form, the first 3 are real aspects, Satyamsa, whereas both name and form are unreal aspects, Mityamsa. Being, awareness, and happiness shine by their own light. But the expansive universe consisting of names and forms is not so. The names and forms are seen as if having existence only because of the existence of their adhisthana, their substratum, which is being, awareness, happiness, Satchidananda. Though a person's shadow pertains only to himself and not to anyone else, that shadow is not that person himself. Just as the shadow gains existence, being, or reality because of the existence of the person, the world, which is the effect, possesses reality or the nature of being because of the being or reality of Brahman, the causal substance. Therefore, taking the real aspect of this world, namely Satchidananda, and discarding its names and forms, this world is real. So the implication of a verse is the world is real as awareness, it's unreal as names and forms. That's the implication. Um, and this is made more clear in the next verse. In the verse 20, what Bhagavan says is, to keep it simple, I'm just reading the meaning, not the verses itself, but for any Tamilians, they can refer to the verses and understand and follow what I'm saying. The meaning of this of verse 20 is literal meaning, without anything added, is when seeing the material cause, because of existing unceasingly, the 3 7 worlds are real. When seeing name and form, which are the imperishable effect, even the cause will be as if a complete nothingness, sunyam. That's a literal meaning of the verse, but it needs a little bit of unpacking. When it says, when seeing the material cause, that means when we see the world, or when we see all the worlds as their Mudal Karana. The term he uses here is the Tamil equivalent of Upadana Karana is Mudal Karana. Mudal Karana literally means the primary cause, but it implies the material cause. So when we see the world as its material cause, which as explained in the previous verse is mere awareness or Satchidananda, because as the material cause, they exist unceasingly, the 3 7 worlds, this is put very briefly in Tamil, Mu, Air, Ulahu. Mu means 3, Air means 7, Ulahu is world. So what is meant by 3 7 worlds? What it implies is all worlds which are variously said to be 3 or 7 above and 7 below. That is very different. There are different classifications in different sastras of how many worlds there are. So very simplest classification, there are 3 worlds. There's the heaven above, this world, and the hell below. That's a simple explanation. But a more elaborate explanation is there are 7 heavens above and 7 hells below. So the higher you go, the more blissful is the heaven. The lower you go, the more miserable is the hell. These are all different ways of talking about the worlds in the sastras. But the point here is it refers to all worlds. However many worlds there are, all of them are real if we see them as their Mudal Karanam, as their Upadana Karana, as the substance of which they're made, namely awareness. But if we see these worlds as mere names and forms, which are the effect, in the verse it's given, Tavada Karanam. Tavada means imperishable. So it seems that taken literally, it's saying the effect is imperishable. But this often in verses things are expressed in a very sutra-like manner, in a very aphoristic manner. So it's not the effect itself is imperishable, but the substance which is seen as that effect is imperishable. So the imperishable effect, in effect, what it means is the effect of the imperishable material cause. So it's the substance which is imperishable, not the names and forms. Of course, names and forms appear and disappear, so they're anything but imperishable. But their substance, their underlying awareness, is imperishable. So when we see the world of mere names and forms, even the cause, that is the upadana karana, the awareness, will be as if a complete nothingness. That is, when we allow our attention to go outwards and we see this world of names and forms, this world seems so real, and it seems even more real than the actual substance, which is the awareness in which that world is appearing. So the implication of this verse is, if we see the world as just the material cause, then it's real. But if we see it as names and forms, it in effect it obscures the underlying reality, the substance of which it is made, the upadana karana, and that upadana karana becomes as if a complete. It's in Tamil, in the verse it's put Purnamam Sunyam. Sunyam means nothingness, non-existence. So full non-existence or complete non-existence. So it becomes completely, by seeing the underlying reality as names and forms, that underlying reality becomes as if completely non-existent. So this verse is clarifying what is meant in the previous verse. It's only if we see the world as awareness, as consisting of nothing but awareness, only in that sense is it real. If we see it as names and forms, then it's totally unreal, and it conceals the underlying reality, which is pure awareness. And then the third verse I'm going to talk about today is verse 21. The meaning of this verse is, again, I'll just read the basic meaning and then elaborate upon it. When seeing the material cause, oh, sorry, no, I'm looking at the wrong verse. I need 21. I'm talking about 21 now, yeah. So 21, the meaning of 21 is, for those who enjoy as real the world perceived in front, it is God's creation. For those who have attained certain knowledge of the unbound reality of oneself, the world is just a mental fabrication, a binding delusion. That's the basic meaning, slightly elaborated. For those who enjoy as real the world perceived in front, it is appropriate to say that it is God's creation. That is what Bhagavan is saying here. For the majority of people who take the world to be real, it's appropriate to say it's God's creation. But he's not actually saying, he's not saying that it is God's creation. For those people, it is God's creation. But for those who have attained certain knowledge of the unbound reality of oneself, the world is a mere mental fabrication, a binding delusion. So that's a literal meaning. Muruganar has slightly elaborated upon this. The first sentence, in the verse, it's just said, for those who enjoy as real the world perceived in front. Murugan has slightly expanded it. For pamara, he uses the word pamara, which is a Sanskrit word that means ignorant, foolish, or low-minded people. So for pamaras who enjoy believing it to be real, referring to the world, for pamaras who enjoy believing it to be real, the world that appears in front is God's creation. And he adds in brackets when the world, to explain the world that appears in front, he says, Jiva Bodha Sut Arivaku. That means to the transitive awareness, the Jiva consciousness. In other words, the individual consciousness, ego, which is that which is aware of, which is transitively aware. In other words, that which is aware of objects or phenomena. This it's only to that to ego that the world appears. It's the implication, and the nature of ego is the jiva bodha, and it is sutarivu. Sutarivu means transitive awareness. Transitive awareness means awareness that is aware of objects or phenomena. In other words, awareness that is aware of things other than itself. Unlike pure awareness, which is intransitive awareness, it's aware of nothing other than itself. So as I say, Murugan's meaning is, for Paramaras who enjoy believing it to be real, the world that appears in front of a transitive awareness, the jiva consciousness, is God's creation. But for Dridha Jnanis, Dridha means what is firm. So Dridha Jnanis are those whose knowledge is firm. In other words, who've got firm knowledge of reality, who have directly known Atma-swarupa. Atma-swarupa means the real nature of ourselves, what we actually are, which is devoid of pasabandham. Pasabandham means the bondage of attachments and desires. The world is manomaya karpana matra. It's a mere fabrication composed of mind, which is maya moha, a delusion of maya. So, so long as we take the world to be real, it's appropriate to say that it's God's creation. But if we know the reality, then it's a mere mental fabrication. That is the essential meaning. So in all these three verses, what the implication is, the world is real as the underlying substance, as the substance of which it is made, in other words, pure awareness, but as names and forms, it is unreal. That is the sum and substance of these three verses. And so long as we take it to be real, it's appropriate to say it's God's creation. But that's not the ultimate truth. In some later verses, he says, he clearly says, God is not God is well, God in the sense of Atma-swarupa, what we actually are, is the upadana karana. It's the substantial cause, but it's not the nimitta karana. It's not the efficient cause. Brahman doesn't do anything to create this world. This world is I think there's one verse 975, in which he clearly says the nimitta karana, the efficient cause of the world appearance, is nothing but ego. Why is that? It's because ego, it's only in the view of ego that the world seems to exist. So there's no world independent of ego. As he says in verse 26 of Ulunabdu, if ego comes into being, everything comes into being. If ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist. The ego itself is everything. So the ego alone is the efficient cause for the appearance of the world. But the underlying reality, the upadana karana, is nothing but Brahman or Atma-swarupa, which is pure awareness. Does anyone have any question about these three verses or the implication of these three verses? Is it quite clear what I explained?
May I make a question?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you, Michael. So, in my experience of the spiritual path, when I am aware of the world, when I connect with the self as I'm talking to someone or as I'm experiencing the world, um, I have a feeling of love. It's like there's no separation, um, and it seems like the world is just one. It's not like something outside of awareness. What's your take on that?
Is that your constant experience?
No,
No.
I have to be very focused to be in this state.
Yes. When the mind is in a more sattvic condition, we will see the world like that. But still, we are seeing the world as a multitude of names and forms. We're seeing it as phenomena. We're seeing multiplicity. When we say we feel love, generally, as Bhagavan made clear, the greatest love that we all have is love for ourselves. But when we feel love for another, there's a separation there. There's the one who is loving and that which is loved. So there's a subject and object. So it's still within the realm of duality. So sometimes things, when the mind is calm and in a sattvic state, sattva literally means beingness. So when it's in a state of beingness, of calmness, of clarity, we are able to um, we we begin to sense the underlying oneness of everything, but we are still seeing that one as many. So this is it's good to have that clarity, but we need to make that permanent, and we need to make it at present it's just a partial clarity. When the full clarity dawns, all differences will disappear, all multiplicity will disappear, and it will be clear, but what exists is one only without a second. As Bhagavan says in the seventh paragraph of Nana, what actually exists is only Atma-sarupa. Atma-sarupa means ourself as we actually are. Is that a clear answer?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I have a following up
Yes.
question. So, how should I proceed in order to being more in that state of awareness? Um,
The more we turn our attention within, the more the mind subsides. And the more the mind subsides, the more the clarity, the natural clarity that is our real nature that shines forth. So
so
Bhagavan's path is very, very simple. All we need to do is to turn our attention within more and more. The more we turn our attention within, the more the mind subsides. And if we turn it within deeply enough, the mind will subside completely. And the reality of the one that one thing that is real alone will remain. And that is what we actually are.
and in practice, that means that, for example, right now that I'm interacting with you, I should be also aware of being, right?
Yes, yes.
Just all the time, right?
Yes, Bhagavan defines what he means by self-investigation as always keeping the mind fixed on oneself. I'm sure if we're honest with ourselves, we all have to admit we fall far short of that, but that is what we're aiming for. And when we are engaging in activities, obviously we generally speaking, our attention doesn't go within so deeply, but at least we can have a background remembrance of our being that we can try to hold on to. But when we are not engaged in activities, then we can go deeper within. But we'll be able to go deeper within only to the extent to which we are holding on to that beingness, our own being, even in the midst of activities.
Mm. That's hard for me.
It's hard for all of us. It's because it's contrary to the very nature of the mind. The very nature of the mind, as Bhagavan says, ego comes into being grasping form. Grasping form it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms it flourishes abundantly. Grasping form means going out, attending to objects or phenomena. So that's the nature of the mind. So we are to hold on to our being, we are, so to speak, swimming against the current of the mind. So it requires a constant effort, and that effort is motivated only by love. So to the extent to which we have love to subside, to surrender ourselves completely, to merge back into our source, to that extent we'll be able to hold on to that. For most of us, that love is very lacking. That is, we may have a little love, a little interest to know who am I, but it's the liking to experience other things is still so strong. The only way to strengthen that love and to reduce the desires and attachments is to persevere in this practice. Because the more we hold on to self-attentiveness, the more we are avoiding being swayed by our Vishaya vasanas, our inclinations to attend to other things. So the Vishaya vasanas grow weaker, and the Sat vasana, the inclination or liking to hold on to our being, increases. Because the nature of vasanas, they derive their strength from us. So the more we allow ourselves to be swayed by any particular vasana, the stronger it becomes. And the more we refrain from being swayed by any vasana, the weaker it becomes. So in order to weaken our Vishaya vasanas and strengthen the Sat vasana, the only means is, well, the most effective means is this self-investigation, holding on to self-attentiveness as much as we can.
Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Well, all thanks to Bhagavan, because I'm just pointing out what Bhagavan has made so clear in his writings and in all his teachings.
There is a question which is related to these verses, I think, in some sense. The question is, why are we perfectly and infinitely happy when we are not aware of anything else? Thank you.
Because infinite happiness is our real nature. We become aware of the other things only when we limit ourselves as a body. As Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Uludunapadu, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. So we see all these names and forms only because we take ourselves to be a name and form of this body, this person we take ourselves to be. In sleep, we don't rise as ego. Consequently, we don't experience ourselves as a form. Consequently, we're perfectly happy. But as soon as we rise as a form, as we rise as ego, we limit ourselves as a form, and whatever happiness we enjoy is very limited. And of course, its opposite comes into existence. That is, there's pleasure and there's pain. That's the nature of life, the pairs of opposites. So pairs of opposites like that are inevitable so long as we rise as ego. So in order to, if we want to be infinitely happy, we have to subside back into our infinite being. And the means to subside back into our infinite being is to hold on to this self-attentiveness as much as we can.
The Atma, when freed from future rebirth, resumes its total oneness with Brahman, which includes the whole manifestation, becoming one with it. Nothing is lost. One is the transcended, and the other, the whole manifestation, is oneself. Is it not so?
There are several points to be clarified here. When we say when Atman is freed, what do we mean by Atman? That is, the word Atma means oneself. It can refer to ourself as we actually are, namely Atma Swarupa, or it can refer to ourself as ego. Atma Swarupa is eternally free. It's eternally one with Brahman. So for Atma Swarupa, there is neither bondage nor liberation. So when we talk about being freed from future birth, what is free from each future birth is ourself as ego. But ego never becomes free. The very nature of ego is bondage. So the freedom from future birth is actually freedom from ego. So it's when the annihilation of ego, when ego is annihilated, our real nature, which is Brahman, shines forth. So it's that which is free is eternally free. That which is in bondage has to be eradicated. So our ego needs to be eradicated, and then our ever-free nature will reveal itself. What we actually are is the eternally free Brahman. So it's not. We can say we resume our oneness with Brahman, but we never have actually ceased to be one with Brahman. We seem to be separate from Brahman because we've risen as ego. When ego is annihilated, the fact that we have always been one with Brahman will become clear. That's the first point. Then when you say Brahman includes the whole manifestation, no, it doesn't. Well, the manifestation, the world, is nothing. Even to call it a manifestation is not really appropriate. In Advaita, we call it an appearance. It's a as Bhagavan put it in Tamil, poi totram. It's an unreal appearance. We wouldn't say that the rope manifests as a snake. The snake is just a false appearance. The rope always remains as a rope. So it's only due to our defective outlook that we see this world. Just like because we fail to see the rope clearly enough, we mistake it to be a snake. Because we fail to be aware of ourselves as we actually are, we see ourselves as this vast world. So as Bhagavan makes clear in these verses, what is real is only the underlying awareness. The appearance, the names and forms are totally unreal. So when we know ourselves as we actually are, there will be no world, no appearance at all. There'll be just one only without a second. That is Advaita. Advaita means Advaita means not two, in the sense that what we actually are is one only without a second. Ekam eva advaityam. That is, there's no thing other than ourself. So the world seems to exist only because we've risen as ego. So when ego ceases to exist, the world will cease to exist along with it. Earlier, I referred to verse 26 of Ulunapadu, in which Bhagavan says, if ego comes into being, everything comes into being. Everything here means all phenomena, all the names and forms, all the objects. They come into being along with ego because they exist only in the view of ego. And then in the next sentence, he says, if ego is not, everything is not. That is, if ego doesn't exist, everything doesn't exist, because everything meaning all of the phenomena. And then he says in the next sentence, ego itself is everything. That is, when we see this world, we who see the world are ego. And as ego, we are seeing ourselves as the world. And he concludes that verse by saying, therefore, investigating what this ego is giving up everything. The reason for that is, if we investigate this ego, ego will subside and dissolve back into its source and be found to be ever non-existent. And when ego ceases to exist, everything ceases to exist. So when we know ourselves as we actually are, there will be no world. Bhagavan makes this very clear in Nana, in Who Am I? In the third paragraph, he says, so long as we see the world, we cannot see ourselves. Just like so long as you see the snake, you see the snake because you don't know that it's a rope. When you know it as a rope, you no longer see the snake. Like that, the world will cease to exist when we know ourselves as we actually are. That he says in the third paragraph, and then in the fourth paragraph, he says, so long when Swarupa is seen, and Swarupa means what we actually are, when we are aware of ourselves as we actually are, there will be no world. When the world appears, we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. So it's very important to understand that there will be no such thing as a world will appear when we know ourselves as we actually are. So you say nothing is lost. Well, nothing real is lost. The one thing that is real always remains. But everything that is unreal, beginning with ego, is lost. So Bhagavan often said, Atma-vichara is not a new knowledge to be attained. All we have to do is remove the wrong knowledge, and the real knowledge will remain as it always is. So attaining self-knowledge is not gaining anything, but losing everything. And when everything is lost, the one thing that is real alone will remain, because that can never be lost. We can never lose what we actually are.
Then
Yeah.
this manifestation is Brahman. So the manifestation as world, that concept will be lost, but the manifestation as Brahman still has to remain.
No, the snake is a rope, but the snake doesn't remain when you see the rope as it is. The snake is a misperception of the rope. Likewise, this world, this manifestation, as you call it, is a misperception of Brahman. We are seeing Brahman, which is Satchidananda. We are seeing it as names and forms.
But in that snake, okay, the snake is not the rope, but there is a form. There's a certain form misread, misunderstood.
Yes.
But still there is a form, and that form is Brahman, Saguna, like the formation
Yes,
of Brahman.
but analogies are useful only to a certain extent. The rope has a form. Brahman has no form. Brahman is the form of Brahman is formlessness. Does consciousness have a form? Does being have a form?
No, but as expression of formation, it can express itself in form.
No. It's only in the ignorant view of ego that forms exist. That's why Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Ulladanaptu, if oneself is a form, the world and God will be likewise. If oneself is not a form, who can see their forms and how? So to be aware of ourselves as a form, that is ignorance. Because what we actually are is formless, pure awareness.
And can know this formless, pure awareness, experience, how will enjoy, how will live itself if it doesn't knows itself.
It is infinite happiness. It doesn't depend on anything else. Now we depend on other things for our happiness. If we don't get food, we feel hungry. If we are given food and we eat it, we feel our hunger is satisfied. So when we rise as ego, we take ourselves to be a body, and therefore we become dependent on things other than ourselves. But our pleasures and pains seem to be caused by things other than ourselves. That's a state of dependence. Whereas what we actually are, Brahman, is totally independent. It's not dependent on anything. It is pure being, pure awareness, pure happiness. It doesn't need anything other than itself to be happy, because it itself is the infinite happiness.
Then why then it was not satisfied with itself and became this?
It never became this.
I mean, why it manifested?
That is, Bhagavan said, asking why is the wrong question. To whom does all this appear? It's only as ego, it's only to us, ourselves as ego, that all this appears. In sleep, nothing appears. But when we rise as ego in waking and dream, all this multiplicity appears. So it appears only in the view of ego. If we investigate this ego, we find ego is unreal. The ego is non-existent. So when ego is found to be non-existent, all the manifestation, all this multiplicity is found to be non-existent. And then the question why it existed doesn't arise. Bhagavan used to say, find the ego and bring it here, then we can find out how it came into existence. But if we look for ego, we won't find anything. But if we look for ego, we won't find any ego. We'll find what we actually are, which is pure awareness.
But how would you know that you exist? If
Because,
there is no, we say
because,
in deep sleep, sleep, you don't know you exist.
Our being is awareness. So in sleep, we know that we exist. We don't know anything else, but we know our being. We know I am.
But when we reflect on it, we knew we are there. But while we going through that experience of deep sleep, we don't know. We don't know our existence. We don't, we exist, but we don't know our existence. How do you know you exist and enjoy that you know you exist? Enjoy your own existence. If you don't know,
how do we know? Sleep is a state in which we were not aware of anything other than ourselves. How do we know that we were in such a state? We must have been aware in that state in order to be, in order to be aware that we were in that state then, we must have been aware when we were in that state. Now we're aware, I was asleep. How do we know that? We know that because in sleep is not a state of non-awareness, it's a state of awareness. What is absent in sleep is awareness of things other than ourselves. But the underlying awareness of being continues to shine. It shines equally in waking, in dream, and in sleep. But in sleep it shines alone, whereas in waking and dream it shines mixed with adjuncts and with all these phenomena.
But it feels like it's not as enjoyable or not as vivid as life, the deep sleep.
Because what exists and shines in sleep is pure being awareness, what we actually are. So sleep is, the happiness enjoyed in sleep is infinite. But because we've now, in waking and dream, when we think about sleep, we are viewing sleep through the limited perspective of ego. So because as ego, we're not aware of ourselves, we're not aware of ourselves as we actually are now. We can't be aware of ourselves as we actually were in sleep. So the same ignorance that is obscuring our view now is obscuring our remembrance of what we experienced in sleep. That's why sleep seems to be a defective state. It seems to be a state of, it doesn't seem to be a state of infinite happiness. Okay, we all know we were happy, we were peaceful in sleep, but it doesn't seem like infinite happiness because the infinite happiness that shone in sleep is now, as soon as we rise as ego, our vision is veiled, as it were, so we can no longer recollect the infinite happiness that we experienced in sleep. So it's only from a perspective of ego in waking and dream that sleep seems to be defective.
So the whole process of fulfillment of spiritual life is to quit the manifested life.
To what, the manifested life?
To quit the manifested life and just abide as essence.
Let's not worry about quitting the manifested life. Let's quit the ego. If we quit the ego, in effect, we quit everything. Because it's only in the view of ego that there seems to be an external world. So Bhagavan didn't recommend external renunciation. He said, if it's your destiny to be a sannyasi, you'll be a sannyasi. If it's your destiny to be a family person, you'll be a family person. But that's not the real renunciation. The real renunciation is renunciation of ego. So long as ego remains, even if we are living an external life of renunciation, we are still bound. Because we still take ourselves to be a body. We still take ourselves to be a limited person. So Bhagavan wasn't opposed to external forms of renunciation, but he didn't recommend them. He said it's all determined by destiny, by prarabdha. So you don't have to worry about that. If you're destined to be married with 10 children, you'll be married with 10 children. If you're destined to be a renunciate, you'll be a renunciate.
So the awareness, the essence, the consciousness won't experience anymore lila, as they say, the play of consciousness. No. So that will be gone forever?
But that'll be, it won't, yes, we can say it will be gone forever, but the truth is it never actually existed. In that state of jnana is a state of infinite clarity. And in that infinite clarity, it will be clear that I alone am, and nothing other than I has ever existed. And that I that then shines is the infinite fullness of pure being, pure happiness, pure awareness, pure love.
Doesn't seem like it, but I hope you're right.
It doesn't seem like it. Yes, but that's what Bhagavan says in one of the verses. If we see the world as names and forms, the underlying reality, which is infinite happiness, seems to be non-existent, seems to be completely non-existent. So everything that we experience now is a distortion of the one infinite Satchidananda that we actually are.
But it seems to me that without that, the consciousness will be incomplete. It's like two aspects, the dense and the dense. Like if there is only substance,
in duality,
it will be incomplete.
That's duality. In duality, you need another to complete. But this is non-duality. There's it is complete in itself. It doesn't depend upon anything else.
But before you read in the verses, you said that this is nothing but Brahman. So the manifestation is nothing but Brahman. So it is oneness.
Yeah, it is nothing but Brahman in the same sense, but the snake is nothing but a rope. But the rope doesn't depend upon the snake. The Brahman doesn't depend upon anything. It is perfect as it is. The snake is just a misperception, a wrong, seeing the snake as seeing the rope as something other than what it actually is. Now what we are seeing is only Brahman, but we're not seeing it as Brahman, because Brahman is one and infinite. We are seeing it as a multiplicity of finite things.
But
we seem to be one among those finite things. So our present view is totally distorted.
But if we see that this manifestation not as a world, separate, but see it as Brahman, then that's non-duality, isn't it?
If we see it as Brahman, that means we see it as not as many, but as one.
Yes, but the one appears as many, but it's one.
No,
so
long as you see the appearance, you're not seeing the one, and you can't see the rope as a rope and as a snake at the same time. We can't see Brahman as one and as many at the same time. Bhagavan says in verse 13 of Ulladu Napadu, awareness of multiplicity is ignorance.
But the ocean with its waves is one ocean. Even though the waves are there, it's still one ocean. So yes, this is one Brahman.
But all these analogies, if we stretch them too far, no analogy is adequate for Brahman. Brahman is infinite, it's immutable, it's ever unchanging.
If it's literally ever unchanging, then what is this dynamism of Brahma which moves?
This is Maya.
Yeah, but that's nothing but Brahman.
It's nothing but Brahman, but it's not Brahman as it actually is.
So can we say that the Brahman's got two aspects, essential and dynamic?
No, Brahman has one aspect. That Maya is nothing other than Brahman. But so long as we are caught in Maya, we are not seeing Brahman as it actually is. Maya is nothing but ego. As ego, we, the infinite, are seeing ourselves as if we're a finite thing. So we need to understand this. Multiplicity appears only in the state of ignorance. The truth is, there is one only without a second.
So in the enlightened being, he can see, he doesn't bump into the table when he walks. He perceives variation of itself as Brahman.
Okay, that we need some clarification about. When we talk about the enlightened being, for example, Bhagavan, because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we mistake Bhagavan to be a body. And so in our view, Bhagavan seems to be seeing the world and not bumping into the table and doing everything very efficiently. He seems to be a person like us. But is Bhagavan just that person? No, he's the infinite whole. So we cannot know Bhagavan as he actually is until we know ourselves as we actually are, because he is what we actually are. But because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we see him as a body.
Yeah, but this manifestation, if it's only Brahman, then nothing else. Then this so-called Maya, it's only Maya when we see it as a world, as something separate. But if we see it as Brahman, because if the Brahman, the reality only exists, then this manifestation has to be that reality, because there is nothing apart from that reality.
Yes, it is all Brahman, but what we are seeing is only Brahman, but we are not seeing it as it is, because Brahman is one and indivisible and infinite. We are seeing it as many, finite, and so many divisions, so many separations.
But if we see it as one, just like the waves, they appear, but it's all one ocean, is not separated. It's all one connected, never separated.
Yes, but
it appears as forms that same one. It is that same one.
Yes, but as I say, these analogies are useful up to a certain point. But Brahman is not like there are no waves in Brahman. Brahman is pure being. The waves are only in the manifest, only in the when we look outwards, we see all these waves and snakes and ropes and all these things. Brahman is not any. Brahman is if we know Brahman as it is, we will not see it as all this multiplicity.
So why do they say this is Brahman's lila? So this manifestation is lila. It's Brahman as lila.
Different teachings are given to suit people at different levels. That's what Bhagavan said in this third verse. For those who enjoy the world as real, it's appropriate to say it's God's creation and it's all God's Leela. That's a lower level of teaching to satisfy what Murugan describes as Pamara, the ignorant, foolish, low-minded people.
But if you enjoy this manifestation as Brahman, but not as a world, as Brahman, then that's a realized life.
No, if you see the world, you're not seeing Brahman as it is. You're seeing Brahman as the world. If you see the world as Brahman, that means you see only Brahman, you don't see the world.
Yes, correct.
You
but
can't,
then
if you see the snake,
Brahman, you won't bump into things because it's Brahman manifested life. So you navigate in Brahman, it's still Brahman.
When you say you don't bump into things, you're still taking yourself to be a body. So long as you take yourself to be a body, you're not Brahman. Brahman is not this body. Brahman is what you actually are.
The essence. But the manifestation is also Brahman, no?
The manifestation is Brahman. Brahman is not the manifestation. That is, the snake is a rope. The rope is not a snake.
Correct, but there is some form which is misunderstood.
There's form only in the view of ego, not in the view of Brahman.
So, but then why does Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi see a form?
When we talk about Bhagavan Ramana Maharshi, we're talking about him as if he were a person. Because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we mistake him to be a body just like us. But that is not what he actually is.
Essentially, yeah, but in manifestation, he perceives the manifestation.
In our dream, he seems to be so. He said, all this is just a dream. And the jnani who appears in the dream, a guru who appears in the dream, is like Bhagavan said, like the lion that appears in an elephant's dream. The lion, when the elephant has a dream of a lion, the shock of seeing the lion wakes it up. The lion is unreal. Like the lion, the name and form of the guru is unreal. But because of the reality that is shining through that name and form, it brings about the real awakening.
Okay, I don't want to take time, just me here, but I would say, I would just feel that somehow it's something will be taken off, something incomplete if the manifestation is not included and we are just an essence. And if that's the culmination of our fulfillment ultimate, just to be essence as essence and not, there won't be any manifestation of that.
Brahman is full, and Brahman is full as it is. It's infinite fullness. It's paripurna. It's not lacking anything. It doesn't depend upon any manifestation.
I was always taking that the manifestation is Brahman and that complete Brahman is the essence and the
yes, the manifestation is Brahman. We need to understand the sense in which it is Brahman. It is Brahman alone that appears as all this. But
correct.
But that is a mere appearance. It's unreal. What is real, the reality that is Brahman, is just pure Satchidananda. Infinite being, infinite awareness, infinite happiness, infinite love.
So that's the essential eternal existence. But the manifest, like the gold, is essential, but the ring or the bracelet, this is a forms of gold. It's nothing but gold. They may be temporarily formed, but still is nothing but gold. And so gold doesn't exist as gold. It exists as gold, but also exists as forms of gold.
Yes, gold cannot exist without form, but Brahman exists without form. Brahman is beyond all forms.
This is a select paradox. Brahman exists without form, and yet there are forms. If he could exist without form, then why form?
In whose view are there forms? It's
The
only
form
because
is
we have
still
limited
perception.
ourselves, but we see all these forms. That's why
But-
Bhagavan said, investigate the one to whom all the forms appear. Find out
But
who
there
you
is
are,
something.
and all these questions will be resolved. Otherwise, we can go on debating these things endlessly. But
I'll just say
yeah,
one thing, only one thing. For example, because we are the same constitution, human being, like if you walk the grass, there is something, some suggestion is there appearing, something is there, and we say the grass. For us is to sit, for a cow is to eat, for a dog maybe is to pee, but for the constitution of a human, we've got similar also perceiving and enjoying the grass, but still there is something, that's something, you may call it Brahma, that's something, there is something. So that something, that form, that something is there. And so the Brahman is essence, but also that's something which we interpret different species in different ways, but there is something manifested.
yeah. But so long as we look away from ourselves, so long as we look outwards, we see multiplicity. If we look within, we will see the underlying reality, which is never multiple, which is ever one without a second. That's why this isn't just, Bhagavan's teachings are extremely practical. We need to apply it in practice, then all this will become clear.
Okay, so the complete realization fulfillment is not to see that Brahman is the essence and the manifestation as well.
It is to see that Brahman alone is. And we are
Without
that.
manifestation, no
Yeah.
manifestation.
No.
And then when we drop this frame, we become free from rebirth, then there won't be many manifestation.
No. Yeah. If the manifestation will cease only when ego ceases. It's not about the body. The body, so many bodies have died and come and gone. This is an endless cycle. So long as ego remains, we will continue projecting a body and world time and time again. So what needs to die is the ego. And the means to put an end to ego, to eradicate ego, is to investigate what we actually are. Because ego is a false awareness of ourself.
And the entertainment of life will be gone.
Yeah. But so long as you want that entertainment, enjoy it. There's no Bhagavan doesn't tell us that the choice is ours. We have a choice. Do we want to continue enjoying this world with all its pleasures and pains, or do we want to be free of all this? The choice is ours. This spiritual path is for those who have had enough and want to return back to what we actually are. Well,
So-
there's in Maharshi's Gospel or some book, I can't remember exactly where, someone asked Bhagavan, though we know, we've read your teachings, we know there's no happiness in the things of the world, but why is it the mind still goes after the world? Bhagavan said, because you haven't had enough of it yet. So long as we haven't had enough of it, we will continue suffering in this world. A time will come when we will decide we've had enough. We don't want the manifestation. Let the manifestations stay or whatever. We're not concerned. We want to return to our eternally peaceful being and to be as we actually are.
But the Ishvara, the cosmic consciousness, Ishvara is fully enlightened, but he still wants to manifest.
God as Ishvara exists, that is Jagajiva-shvara, world, soul, and God, appear simultaneously and disappear simultaneously. In the 7th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, what actually exists is only Atma-swarupa. Atma-swarupa means Brahman, what we actually are. Jagajiva-shvara, world, soul, and God, are appearances in it like silver in mother of pearl. The three appear simultaneously and disappear simultaneously. All are nothing but Swarupa. So the
But if
choice
you
is ours. Do we want the many or do we want the one? But we each
well,
have to make the choice ourselves.
well, that's the question. But if there is only one reality and manifests as that, that means that the reality wants to manifest its aspect, its intrinsic nature to manifest.
We are making them. We are imposing our limited view on the infinite. The infinite reality doesn't want anything. It's happy just to be as it is.
Then why it became all this?
It hasn't become all this.
So why it
It
appears?
appears. It appears.
Yeah,
To whom does it appear?
To awareness.
No, to you, the one who mistakes yourself to be the body. That is why Bhagavan said, we need to investigate the one to whom this appearance, all this appears. So long as we look at the appearance, it all seems very real. But if we investigate ourself, the one to whom it appears, we as ego will subside and dissolve back into our source, and everything will dissolve along with us. And what alone exists will alone will remain as it always was.
True, but Bhagavan's ego subsided, but he was still aware of manifestation.
In whose view?
In his view.
No, in your view. You are saying that Bhagavan never said he's aware of a manifestation.
You talk to him and he replied to you. He walks.
Because you take him to be a body, but he's not that body.
But he's aware of the body.
No. He says Vijnani is like a person sleeping in a cart. Just like the person sleeping in the cart is not aware whether the cart is moving or is standing still or is unyoked, Vijnani is not aware of the body, whether it's active or inactive or sleeping or in samadhi or whatever. But all these differences exist in our view, not in his view. In his view, there is one only without a second. And that is what we actually are. That's what the whole of Vedanta is pointing at. Tattvamasi, you are that. Know yourself and all this will become clear. Until we know ourselves, we can go on debating these things endlessly, but it's all of no use. If we want infinite happiness, we need to know ourselves as we actually are. And to know ourselves as we actually are, we have to let the world be real or unreal. It's no concern of ours. Who am I? We need to turn our attention back within. We need to give up our concern about the world.
But yeah, definitely about limitation or that. But if you drop some things like this, you're not sure whether that's the right direction to go.
Well, before we can know anything else, we first need to know ourselves. Whatever knowledge we have about other things is unreliable so long as we don't even know the reality of the knower. So let's know the reality of the knower and then worry about other things.
Okay, let's see. Because others who claim also they are knowers, they say this is the lila, this is inseparable.
Yes, let them say that. Different people have different. Those who there's a verse in Guru Vācaka Kōvai in which Bhagavan says, just like an infatuated lover who foists chastity upon a prostitute, those who are enamored by this world will say it is real. If we are still enamored by the world, let us take it as real. Let's enjoy it and suffer in it. But how much longer are we going to continue suffering like this? We've been suffering like this for countless lives.
True, from an individual perspective, but the Shiva tradition said you become one with everything. So what means that the manifestation is there, but it's you. So it will be still the manifestation, but you won't be suffering from it. It will be like a show to you.
Yeah, you're talking about Kashmir Shaivism, but Kashmir Shaivism is it is different to Advaita. Though they claim to be Advaita, they say that the world is real, many is real, but it's Shiva who appears as all this. That is not Advaita Vedanta. Advaita Vedanta says Shiva alone is, you are that.
Okay. I was in one video of Sarvapri and I said, you become one with everything. So the manifestation is there, but you are one with that.
Yeah, different, that is in Vedanta, many different levels of teachings are given to suit people of different levels. That's why we have Advaita, we've got Vishista Dvaita, we've got Dvaita, we've got Achintya Bheda, we've got Suddha Dvaita. So many different interpretations of Vedanta are there to suit people at different levels. But the deepest truth is Advaita, and the purest Advaita is what Bhagavan has taught us. So if you don't like Bhagavan's teachings, you can take any other form of Vedanta is like a mother who caters for children of all ages. The food she gives to a newborn infant is not the same food she gives to her 20-year-old child. So like that, Vedanta caters for a wide variety of needs that we have at different levels of spiritual development. But the ultimate truth is one only without a second.
I like Bhagavan, but I understood him differently. That's why I thought he
Yes.
meant also the manifestation is Brahman. And so when you see it separately, you see it as a world. But once if you see it as Brahman, then the world idea disappears and everything. What is there is Brahman. So the manifestation is Brahman. That was my understanding from Bhagavan. But now you're saying differently. So
well, if
look, I don't want to waste any more time.
It's worth reading Bhagavan very carefully and paying close attention to what he says and thinking about it and trying to put it into practice.
Okay, I understood differently. Okay, thank you for your time.
Okay, most welcome.
Michael, do you want me to go through all the other questions as well?
Yeah, should we do the email questions first? And then I think the others won't take long. Oh, I think all these 6, no, I don't think it's worth it because I mean, we could go through, but there must be so many other people who have questions. So, I mean, we could later go through if there are no more questions, but I think that's unlikely.
Yes, no, that's fine. Sanjay, would you like to ask the question yourself?
Sir, in the idea of Panchkoshas, I believe Manomaya Kosha includes all thoughts, perceptions, memories, and feelings. In other words, all phenomena are included in the term Manomaya Kosha. This is what I understood. Since this universe is nothing but our thoughts or ideas, is this entire universe included in our Manomaya Kosha? Thank you.
We can say so if we want to, but we need to understand why are these 5 koshas? Well, that is, what is the purpose of this Panchakosha analysis? Because what we take ourselves to be is not just this physical body. It's the life that animates this body, the mind, the intellect and will that function within this body. So these 5 collectively are what are called body. Bhagavan clarifies that in verse 5 of Ulurunapatu. Uru Panchakosa Uru. The body is a form of 5 sheaves. Therefore, all 5 are included in the term body. And then he says, without a body is there a world? Leaving the world is anyone who has, leaving the body is anyone who has seen a world. So only when we identify this body of 5 sheaves as I, do we perceive a world. And then in the next verse he says, this world is nothing but the 5 kinds of sense impression. And since the one mind perceives these 5 sense impressions, is there a world apart from the mind? When he said the one mind, the mind that perceives the world is not any of these koshas, it's ego. So we that is, we need to understand what is the purpose of each type of analysis. So the analysis of the five sheaves is to help us distinguish ourselves from everything that we take ourselves to be. We are not any of these five sheaves. That's one type of analysis for one purpose, to help us distinguish ourselves from everything that we mistake ourselves to be. The world, yes, the world is nothing but perceptions. As Bhagavan said, the world is nothing but the five kinds of sense impression, nothing else. And so this world is not, since this world is perceived by ego, the world is not other than ego. So it's very different ways of analyzing for different purposes. The reason we analyze about the world is to understand that this world is not real, but it depends entirely upon our perception of it. Just like the world we see in a dream. The world we see in a dream doesn't exist independent of our perception of it. The analysis of the five sheaves is to help us distinguish ourselves from everything that we take ourselves to be. So I mean, it's not wrong what you say, but there's no benefit in mixing up these different types of analysis. We want to keep things clear and simple. So there's no world apart from the body, Bhagavan says in verse 5. In verse 6, he says there's no world apart from the mind. And there he's talking about the perceiving element of the mind, which is ego.
Yes, so what you say now makes sense, because there was one more continuation of this is in paragraph 16 of Nanar, Bhagavan says, oneself is within the Panchakoshas, whereas texts are outside them. So over here is clearly distinguishing that mind is not the world here.
Well, yeah, that is the books are part of the world, which seems to us, so long as we take ourselves to be this bundle of five sheaves, the books seem to be something other than ourselves. Here is a book. I don't take this book to be myself. I am this body. This book is something other than me. So we very different types of analysis to serve different purposes.
Yes.
But what the ultimate purpose of all these things is that the world seems to exist only so long as we take ourselves to be a body. So taking ourselves to be a body, that is a fundamental error. And we make that error because we are looking at other things, not looking at ourselves. So to put an end to this error of mistaking ourselves to be the body, we need to know what we actually are. And for that, we need to turn our attention within. So all this analysis of the non-self, the world, the five sheaves, all these things, is only to make us understand that we shouldn't attend to any of these things. We should attend only to ourselves.
So, sir, in this case of Panchakoshas, we can say that the thoughts which appear in our mind are included in that Panchakosha, not the entire world. We can say that.
We can also say the entire the body exists is something that we perceive. The prana is something that we perceive. So we can say it's all part of Manomaya Kosha if we want to. I'm not saying it's wrong to say that, but I'm saying it's just not very useful to say that.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
If someone who's practicing self-attentiveness is following Bhagavan's path, but has received a diagnosis of Alzheimer's, how can that person continue to practice at some point? It's not a lack of love or wanting, it's just impossible. Is it prarabdha karma? Why could that person be stopped in her practice?
Okay. At present, hopefully, we all have we have our normal mental faculties. While we have our normal mental faculties, we should be making use of every precious moment to attend to ourselves. If we cultivate the practice of self-attentiveness, that is, the more we attend to ourselves, the more we are strengthening the sattvasana and weakening the vishaya vasanas. So if after some time our mental faculties begin failing, if we're suffering from Alzheimer or any other type of dementia, if we have cultivated a strong sattvasana, we will continue practicing, even in spite of whatever mental ailment there may be. Many of us may not be strong enough in our practice yet, so if we do get Alzheimer's or anything, we may not continue, but let's not worry about that now. Let us now make use of the time we've got. Tomorrow I may have Alzheimer's. Tomorrow this body may be dead. It doesn't matter. Let's make use of this moment now. That is the only time we can investigate ourselves is in the present moment. So let's not worry about the past when so many times when we fail to attend to ourselves. Let's not worry about the future when circumstances may not be so favorable. Let's make use of the present moment. If we are not strong in our practice and we begin to suffer from dementia or something, we may forget about this practice. We may not continue it. That is a temporary state, because Alzheimer's doesn't last forever. If you get Alzheimer's, you may live for another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever. Sooner or later, the body's going to drop down, and we'll get another body which won't be suffering from Alzheimer, and we can start all over again. Well, we don't start all over again. Wherever we start is where we left off previously. So the more we strengthen this sattvasana in this life, the more that same inclination will resume, and the favorable circumstances will be there. Regarding about why that a person could be stopped in their practice by such an illness, but that's prarabdha. Whatever is allotted to us in our prarabdha is what is most favorable for our spiritual development. We cannot understand why certain things are allotted to us. Bhagavan knows that is, prarabdha is the fruit of our past karmas, but Bhagavan has selected for us to experience in this lifetime. The fruit of karmas are entirely in the hands of Bhagavan, entirely in the hands of God. Once we do an action, we have no say over the fruit. So the fruit is stored until such time as God chooses to allot it to us as prarabdha. But he only allots whatever fruit he allots in any lifetime is what is most favorable for our spiritual development at that stage. So if for some reason we get Alzheimer's, that's his will. He knows what is best for us. Let's leave it to him. So let's not concern ourselves about these things. What we should concern ourselves about is here and now, trying our most to hold on, our best to hold on to self-attentiveness. Let the past and future and everything else take care of itself. Definitely, the more sincerely we practice this, the more the favorable circumstances for practicing will be given to us.
The next question is, that pure consciousness is behind the three states: sleep, waking, dream, and it can be understood even rationally. However, it appears that there is an assumption being made when we state that pure awareness always is, even beyond physical death. It can only be perceived indirectly by seeing that what is behind a newborn is pure awareness, Although I see that ego sees itself as pure awareness only by subsiding, ego sees itself as ego only as long as it does not subside. Perhaps the truth can be seen here.
Okay. Pure awareness is what we actually are. Pure awareness is our very being. Bhagavan has given had explained this in various ways. For example, in verse 23 of Upadesha Undiyar, he says, because of the non-existence of any awareness other than what is, to know what is awareness. What is, well, Tamil use for what is Ulludu. That means what actually exists. So if awareness was something other than what is, it would be what is not. So it would be non-existent. So there cannot be an awareness other than what is to know what is. Therefore, what is awareness. And that awareness exists as we. That is what we actually are. So if we consider teachings like this, and I mean, we in different contexts, different teachings are some teachings are more relevant, some are less relevant. But if we take this teaching in the context of Bhagavan's teachings as a whole and think about these things, it is very clear that awareness and being are not two different things. And it's also clear that anything that comes into being and ceases to be is not what actually is. So there is one infinite being that exists eternally. Even time depends on that being for its seeming existence. In whose view does time exist? Time exists only when we rise as ego. In sleep, we don't experience any time. We experience time in waking and dream. So time depends for its seeming existence upon the seeming existence of ourself as ego. And our seeming existence as ego depends on the real existence of ourself as Sat-Chit. And Sat-Chit is therefore beyond time. It's the underlying reality of time. So to try to conceive of a time when there is no Sat-Chit makes no sense at all, because without Sat-Chit there is nothing. Well, there's no such thing as without Sat-Chit, but Sat-Chit is what is. So, and we are that. So if we understand these things clearly, it's very obvious that Sat-Chit, which is pure being awareness, is the one reality, the one thing that is actually real. Everything else is just an appearance. Everything other than Sat-Chit appears and disappears. In other words, it comes into being and it ceases to be. Since it comes into being and ceases to be, it is not intrinsically existent. It depends for its being or existence on something else. It derives its existence from something else. Anything that is something is not intrinsic, it has to be derived from something else. For example, there are many things that are not intrinsically hot. Take a hot potato, for example. Potatoes are not intrinsically hot. So if you get a hot potato, where does that potato get its heat from? It got its heat from the oven or from the boiling water or something. And where did the boiling water or hot air get its heat from? They're not inherently intrinsically hot. So it must get its heat from something that is intrinsically hot. So they get their heat from fire. Fire is intrinsically hot. Because whenever there's fire, there's heat. You can't have fire without heat. So if we apply that understanding, whatever is not intrinsic has to be derived from something else. everything that comes into being and ceases to be is not intrinsically it's not intrinsically existent. If it were intrinsically existent, it couldn't ever cease to be. So all things that come into being and cease to be are derive their being from something else. So from what do they derive their being? All things other than Sat-Chit exist only in the view of ego. So they derive their semi-existence from the semi-existence of ourself as ego. And from where does ego derive its semi-existence? From the real existence of ourself as Sat-Chit. So Sat-Chit is the one thing that we can never conceive of its non-existence, because to say existence doesn't exist makes no sense at all. So pure awareness, which is Sat-Chit, is the fundamental reality. It can never cease to be. Is that I don't know who asked this question, but is that a clear answer?
Yes. Thank you, Mike.
Right.
Yes. Is it possible for a person to revert back to the awareness of the world of names and forms as real in itself, even after the ego has succeeded in turning 180 degrees towards its own chit aspect?
No, because once ego has turned 180 degrees, it is eradicated, it is dissolved. Even to say it is dissolved is not the full truth. Once we know what we actually are, we will know that we have never been ego. So since ego never actually existed, there's no question of reverting back to it. All this seems to exist only because we are not aware of ourselves as we actually are. If we for one moment become aware of ourselves as we actually are, we will know that we are eternally that, and that is an end to everything. That is, in the state of jnana, it's not even as if there was once an ego but investigated itself and then came to know what it really is. It will be clear that there's, as Bhagavan says in verse 17 of Upadesha Undiyar, when one investigates without forgetting, when one investigates the form of the mind without forgetting, there's no such thing as mind at all. That is, if we vigilantly investigate ourselves, it'll be clear that what he refers to there is a form of mind. He's referring to ego. There's no such thing as ego at all. And since there's no such thing as ego at all, there's no such thing as body or world or anything else. That is why the ultimate truth is ajata. So even now, this ego, all these things that appear, they don't actually exist, but they all seem to exist because we have risen as ego. Therefore, we need to investigate ourselves and find out what we actually are.
Next question. Could Michael talk about this verse a little bit, please? Thank you. So the verse it's verse 372. O good-natured aspirants who want perfection, instead of trying to avoid poverty, which is a deficiency created by the mind, by acquiring wealth, it is better to acquire shanti, that is mental peace. Sri Muruganar says, poverty is truly created not by a deficiency of wealth, but by the deficiency of the wandering and desirous mind. Hence, poverty is not removed by acquiring wealth, it is removed only by subsiding the mind. And this is chapter 67, Desirelessness.
Nirasa.
Yeah, Nirasa, page 106.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. To me, what is the verse number again? It seems to me very clear, but
it's verse 372.
372. Yeah, that is the greatest wealth is to be free of desire. Even if we have hundreds of billions of dollars, as some people have, if we still have desire, we are poor. Poverty is nothing but a deficiency or a seeming deficiency created by desire. So there's no happiness greater than the happiness of desirelessness. Being free of desire is the supreme treasure. If we're free of desire, we are the richest person. well, even that is, I mean, that's a way of putting it. But the truth is, so long as we rise as ego, we cannot be totally free of desire. We can reduce the strength of our desires to a considerable extent, but the very nature of ego is to have desires and attachments. As Bhagavan says, it's by attaching itself to a form, that is, without attaching itself to a form, ego cannot come into being, cannot stand, and cannot flourish. So so long as we rise as ego, we will have desire to a greater or lesser extent. In order to eradicate ego, we need to our desires need to diminish to a considerable extent, because so long as we've got strong desires and attachments, we won't be willing to turn within to find out what we actually are. So to get rid of desire completely, we need to get rid of ego. So all spiritual practices are aimed at purifying the mind. The impurities in the mind are the Vishaya vasanas, which are the seeds that give rise to all desires. So we can reduce the Vishaya vasanas by a variety of different spiritual practices. But the most effective means to reduce them is this practice of self-investigation. And self-investigation is the only means by which we can get rid of the root of all desires, namely ego. So the ultimate spiritual practice is this practice of Atma-vichara. So if we want to be free of desires, we need to persevere in following this very simple and beautiful path that Bhagavan has taught us. That is the only way to free ourselves from ego, who is one who has all desires. And only when we free ourselves from ego can we be completely free of desire. That is why when I started to say the person who is free of desires is the richest person in the world, even that's not true. So long as we take ourselves to be a person, we have risen as ego. And therefore, there will be desire, at least to some extent. So if you want to be completely free of desire, we need to cease rising as ego and thereby cease being a person. We need to be as we actually are, as the infinite Satchidananda. Was that a helpful comment on that? What Murugan wrote there was very, very clear. It seemed to me.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.
Would you like to ask a question, Titi?
Hi, Michael. I want to. I have a question. I had a discussion in the past with you about ego and free will, and I want to try again to say something. Yes, because you mentioned that ego is not totally free, it's partial free.
Yes.
So for me, even this statement is I don't agree, because as an ego, let's say when the ego creates this world, he is subject to causality, so he enslaves himself, you know, as a, so he's nothing, he's like a causal mechanism who creates. So there is no one who has a will, who even who go inside. You know, there is only a causal mechanism which manifests, you know, which appears, but there is no will. From my perspective, there is no even partial will from this perspective, because it couldn't be, because is no one there. There is not, you know, there is no one there who go inside. It happens.
Okay, shall I answer that? That is, the one who has a will is ego. Yes, it is true, ego doesn't actually exist. But it's only in the view of ego that all this multiplicity seems to exist. So ego seems to exist. So long as we rise as ego is the, when you talk about causality, it's important to understand the root cause, the cause of causality is ego. It's only when we rise as ego that cause and effect come into being. So it causes, that is, our real nature is infinite freedom. That infinite freedom, when we rise as ego, that infinite freedom seems to be limited. So as ego, we experience limited freedom. The freedom we have is freedom of will and freedom of action, as Bhagavan says. Of course, these freedoms are limited freedoms, but we do have those freedoms. And it's only when we misuse those freedoms that we do karma, agamya karma, and that is, agamya karma means the actions we do under the sway of our vasanas, under the sway of our will, and those are the actions that bear fruit. And the fruit are allotted in the form of prarabdha. So we have no freedom to determine what we experience. But that, just because we have no freedom to determine what we experience, that doesn't stop us wanting to experience things and trying to experience things. Whether we experience them or not is determined by prarabdha. So our freedom of will and action determines what we want to experience and what we try to experience. Prarabdha determines what we are to experience. So Bhagavan is very clear about that. We have freedom of will and freedom of action. We have no freedom over what we experience, because that is prarabdha. That's what we are given to experience is the fruit of our past actions. So the will, and one of the terms for the will is the karana sarira, the causal body. The will consists of, in its most basic form, it consists of all the vasanas. Vasanas are the seeds that give rise to likes and dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, and everything. So the root of that is the will in its seed form is what are called vasanas. And the totality of vasanas are what are called the chittam, or will, which is also called the Anandamaya kosha, or causal body. It is called the causal body because everything that we experience is nothing but a projection of our vasanas. Bhagavan compared the vasanas to the images on a film reel. Just like the images on the film reel are projected out on the screen and appear to be moving pictures, this whole world is nothing but a projection of our own vasanas. Which vasanas are allowed to be projected as the external world, that's determined according to prarabdha. But while we're experiencing the prarabdha, we have that freedom of will and action. So we are free to, it's maybe our destiny to live in poverty all our life. That doesn't stop us wanting to be rich. It doesn't stop us trying to be rich. It does stop us being rich because we're destined to be poor. So we do have freedom of will and we do have freedom of action. Freedom of will, that is the vasanas, they are the seeds that give rise to the likes, dislikes, and so on. But vasanas are inclinations. We are not bound by our inclinations. So where the real freedom of will lies is that at any moment in our life, so many vasanas are rising to the surface of our mind. And as Bhagavan said, they rise in countless numbers like ocean waves. Many of the vasanas we have are contrary to each other. For example, just to take a simple example, if we are in the habit of smoking, we are a smoker because we have cultivated an inclination to smoke. But we may know that smoking is bad for our health. So we are concerned about our health. We don't want to get cancer, or we don't want to die prematurely. So we also have an inclination to take care of our health. We've got two conflicting inclinations. So when the inclination rises to smoke a cigarette, another inclination will rise to avoid smoking a cigarette, because the cigarette is if I continue this habit of smoking, I'm going to, sooner or later, I'm likely to die of cancer or something. So we have two conflicting inclinations. Where our freedom lies, we have the freedom to follow this inclination or that inclination. This is just one example, but like this, there are so many inclinations constantly rising in our mind. We are constantly choosing which inclination to follow and which inclination not to follow. And the inclinations we follow get strengthened, and the inclinations we avoid following are weakened. So if we want to be free of, if we want to surrender our will to God, in other words, if we want to be free of our individual will, we need to avoid being swayed by our Vishaya vasanas. We need to be swayed only by Sat vasana, the inclination just to be as we are, the inclination to hold on to our being and thereby be as we actually are. So by practicing self-investigation, we are weakening the Vishaya vasanas and strengthening the Sat vasana. And eventually, when the Sat vasana becomes strong enough, we will have the strength of love to hold on to self-attentiveness so firmly that we subside completely and merge forever back into our source. That is the end of ego. That's the end of all limitations on our freedom. Then when we remain as we actually are, we're infinitely free, because we alone exist. There's nothing to limit our freedom. Is that a clear answer?
I want to intervene to say something about your example with cigarette. You said that you have this freedom to choose to not or to smoke or not smoke. This is what I want to emphasize here. There is no one who chooses to smoke. There is happening. There is a causal.
There is someone who's choosing. If I smoke, I am one who chooses to smoke. There is a choice.
I choose because of something. There is not freedom. I cannot choose.
then if there's no freedom, then all spiritual teachings, all moral teachings, all are of no use. All laws, all national laws are of no use, because what's the use if we got no freedom? We're not free to either to choose whether to follow the law or not to follow the law. We're not free to choose whether to act in a moral manner or to act in an immoral manner. We are not free to choose to follow some spiritual practice or not to do so. So if we deny freedom, then it all becomes meaningless. All spiritual
I want to
teachings,
ask you
all moral
something.
teachings, all laws, everything, the whole society falls apart.
Can you choose without having a cause?
That is, the cause is our own, our will is the root. Well, the root cause is ego. And that is the second level cause is our will. Ultimately, this whole world is a manifestation of our will. Our prarabdha is also, though we do not choose to experience the prarabdha is the result of our previous misuse of our freedom of will. So ultimately, will is the cause of everything. That is why in the spiritual path, we understand that our will has got us in this mess. That's why we seek to surrender our will to the will of God.
I want to say something in this will. There is no freedom truly is in consciousness. Consciousness in will is not possible because will means causality. So I cannot choose without causality. It's impossible to choose. There is a causal system. I choose something because of something.
But you as ego are the root cause. So you have that freedom.
What freedom? Because I am subject to causality. Everything I choose, I am subject to causality. I am not free.
What do you need to decide? Are you ready to accept Bhagavan's teachings or not? Because Bhagavan has taught us that we have freedom of will and action. All spiritual teachings are based upon the premise that we have freedom of will and action. So if you reject the freedom, you're rejecting all spiritual teachings. You're rejecting all moral principles.
No. It's as a convention level, I can say, okay, there is freedom in this level, conventional level. But if you go deeper, there is not freedom at all, because
if there's no freedom, then what's the point of all this? What's the point of all these spiritual teachings? How can spiritual teachings help us if we have no freedom to follow them?
Because there is no one here.
I mean,
you have to go beyond.
We each have to
beyond this will.
We each have to consider these things for ourselves. Do Bhagavan's teachings make sense to us or not? If they make sense to us, and if we want to follow them, we have the freedom to follow them. If they don't make sense to us, or if we choose not to follow them, we have that freedom not to follow them. It's up to us. You also have the freedom to say there's no freedom if you want. That's fine. But it's not a very wise use of our freedom to decide that there's no freedom.
This part sounds like Christianity, when you choose between hell and Eden. So
in any spiritual path, there's a choice. And Bhagavan said, the spiritual path is nothing but a battle going on within our own will. Ultimately, it's a battle between the initially it's a battle between the good vasanas and the relatively good and the relatively bad vasanas. We try to replace the relatively bad vasanas with relatively better vasanas, but ultimately it is a battle between sat vasana and vishaya vasanas.
Yeah, I'm trying to, but for me, it's.
But you have the freedom to choose whether you want to believe this or not. No one can deny that freedom.
No, in this realm, no, because everything is causal. It's a conventional.
It is, you have the freedom to decide whether everything is, whether you're bound by causes or whether you have some degree of freedom. If you choose to use your freedom to decide that you have no freedom, that's your choice. That's your freedom.
We have
ultimately
freedom.
We are the cause of everything. We as ego have brought all this into existence. Because when we rise as ego, everything rises. When we subside and cease to, when we do not exist as ego, nothing else exists. So let's not worry about other causes. Let's sort out sort out this root cause, which is our rising as ego.
Yeah. But for me, as a root cause, for now, it's impossible to understand as ego, which creates this causality to have freedom. His lays, for me. So I agree with all teachings of Bhagavan, but for me, this I can't.
Bhagavan has taught that we have freedom of will and action. In fact, all of Bhagavan's teachings are based on the premise that we have freedom of will and action. If we had no freedom of will and action, then there's no need for any teachings.
There is no teaching. There is no one here who decides to choose. There is only happening.
Who is it who says there's no one here? That one who says it is here. So again, we can't deny our own existence. And at present, though this ego existence is not our real existence, at present we experience this ego existence as if it were our real existence. And that is the problem. And that is what we need to sort out.
Yes,
we need to use the freedom of will and action to turn our attention within and find out what we actually are. Then all these questions will resolve themselves. As Bhagavan says in verse 19 of Uludu Napadu, the dispute about which prevails, will or fate or will, is only for those who do not have the discrimination, who do not discern the root of fate and will. The root of fate and will is obviously ego. It's ego who has a will, and as a result of its misuse of its will, it's experiencing fruit. So he goes on to say, though if we investigate the reality of that, if we investigate that root, then we would go beyond the. Wait now, I'll just get the exact meaning of the verse. I don't. Only for those who do not have discernment of the root of fate and will is there dispute about which prevails, fate or will. Those who have known themselves, who is the one origin for fate and will, have discarded them. Will they thereafter be associated with them? That is, so long as we rise as ego, we have a will and we consequently experience fate. So in order to free ourselves from this limited will and limited fate, we need to know ourselves as we actually are. Once we know ourselves as we actually are, as the one infinite whole, then we have transcended this fate and will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
At the moment, this is the last question, which is, yeah. So the question is, Michael G, life is obviously hard. I believe you have experienced many ups and downs in life. As a devotee and a beloved child of Bhagwan, has your trust in him ever wavered at any point in time? Have you ever felt that Bhagwan had abandoned you?
By his grace, I've never felt that. For me, it's inconceivable that Bhagavan could abandon. In fact, it is, Bhagavan is our own being, our own reality, so he can never abandon us. And Bhagavan is infinite love. So Bhagavan loves us not as the person whom we take ourselves to be. He loves us as we actually are. So Bhagavan's love is infinite and all-embracing. So the idea that Bhagavan could ever abandon us, well, if we imagine that Bhagavan could abandon us, we haven't understood what Bhagavan is. We haven't even got an inkling of what Bhagavan is. I mean, none of us have really understood what Bhagavan is, but at least by his grace, we have some inkling of what he is. He is infinite love, infinite being. So he never will abandon us. He won't let go of us. The problem is we are constantly letting go of him. That's where the problem lies. So by his grace, we need to try to hold on to him. He's ever shining in our heart as our own being. So that is what we need to hold on to. And regarding ups and downs in life, who hasn't experienced ups and downs in life? We all face challenges. That's the nature of samsara. That's the nature of this existence. None of us have a none of us have a perfect life, but all the difficulties we face in life, all the different types of difficulties, they're all given to us by Bhagavan for our own good. He won't give us anything that is not ultimately for our good. So even if we undergo great difficulties, I mean, sometimes life seems to be somewhat okay. We manage pulling along, muddling along somehow, but sometimes there's serious setbacks. Anything could happen to our health at any time. We could have a major accident. We can have bereavement. So many things can happen. But whatever happens, nothing can happen without his will. Without his, I mean, whatever happens is according to his will. And whatever he wills is what is best for all concerned. So whatever may happen, well, of course, nobody can say my faith in Bhagavan will never waver. That would be a big ego to say that. But I trust in his grace that he will, that he will always take care, and that he will at least, never let me lose my trust in him. That's my belief. But if he chooses to make me lose it, that's also his will. So who am I to complain?
Michael, thank you so much. This question, I really will appreciate if we can see it from, not from the perspective of the snake, but from the perspective like a little bit more deeper, if it's possible. There's only a question that keeps kind of coming back over and over, and I don't know. I know that it's probably ego. Obviously, all questions are ego, but I really will appreciate to know if it's possible, if Bhagavan ever talk about the reason why we don't remember previous lives, so we can perhaps see clearly why our pradapta, why everything. And I think this could wake up the dream faster, or this could actually help in any form or way. Whatever, it never happens, but in a way, in this apparent dream that is happening, I think that will be very helpful. But I just wonder if Bhagavan ever wrote about it or spoke about it.
Yeah, I think there is a verse in Guru Vācaka Kōvai. I can't remember now exactly where it is or what number it is, but in that verse, Bhagavan says something to the effect that it is by God's grace that we forget previous lives. If we were burdened by all the memories of all the things we had done in previous lives, I mean, we're already burdened with so many memories of things in this life. So it's by God's grace that we are saved, we are spared from the memory of things in previous lives. Also, I mean, to try to understand this a bit more, why should we want to remember? I mean, what benefit is there in remembering previous lives? You say that if we remember the previous lives, we'll understand why we are experiencing this prarabdha. But the prarabdha is the fruit of our past actions. But the prarabdha is a bundle of fruit that have been selected. So it's not just all selected from one lifetime. They're selected from, there have been countless lifetimes, and in those countless lifetimes, we've done countless actions, and we can only ever experience a tiny fraction of those actions, of the fruit of those actions, because we, as a general rule, particularly when we're in a lower state of mind and more strongly swayed by desires and everything, we are, in every lifetime, we are accumulating far more fruit than we are experiencing in that lifetime. So if we experience one lifetime of fruit, we may accumulate 100 lifetimes of fruit. So the sanchita, that's why it's called sanchita, means a heap or a pile. It's a vast, vast heap. So we can't, I mean, if we could remember all the past actions we had done, even then we wouldn't know which actions are causing, which actions cause which fruit. And it's not necessary for us to know this. There's only one thing that is necessary for us to know, and that is, who am I? That is, Bhagavan says, knowledge of multiplicity is ignorance. So the more we know about other things, the more we are drowning in ignorance. So the ignorance we have about our past life is a blessing, because it's saving us from even greater ignorance. Knowing the past, about the past lives, would be a greater ignorance than not remembering them. Is that clear?
Thank you so much.
Does it make sense, that answer? Is it a satisfactory answer?
Yes, is the not knowing, right? The not knowing and knowing that everything is perfectly fine.
Yeah. All we need to do is, if by his grace, we need to trust him, but he knows what is best. Whatever we experience in this lifetime is the fruit of, is a selection of, from a vast heap of the fruit of past actions. He has selected those fruit which will be most conducive to our spiritual development in this life.
Thank you so much.
So that is, he's made it clear there's only one thing worth knowing, and that is, who am I? So let us try to know that and not be too concerned about other things.
Yes. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome.
Tim, you wanted to ask a question? And I think this is the last one now.
Hi there. Can you hear, Michael?
Yes, I can hear.
Yep. Pleasure to speak to you. I've listened to your much of your communications over the years through Bhagavan, and I just wanted to make a quick point regarding the previous questioner, who I think were having some issues over which many of us do, over the concept of free will and what exactly, or freedom of will, and what that actually entails in daily living, so to speak. Because I don't know if this is going to be helpful, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the previous questioner, because that wouldn't be fair. But my understanding of where I think he may be coming from is perhaps the no individual doer thereof and the thy will be done concept, which seems through a certain lens to renege oneself of any actual doership at all, on the basis that whatever you're going to do is going to happen. And therefore, even if you make a good decision, or you're swayed by a Vishaya Vasana, or you find yourself inclined to devote to the Sat Vasana, that is already decided. That is already not in your hands. And surrender, I think, is the feeling that you let go of the fact that you have any actual free will. And I wonder if that may help clarify what he was speaking to, and whether that also, whether you can make any comment on that point, Michael.
But if we've got no freedom of will and action, how can we surrender? We must have a freedom in order to be able to surrender. We want to surrender our limited freedom.
But the causality...
we must have a freedom in order to surrender that freedom.
The issue, I think, arises from my perspective as well, and this is why I think I wanted to comment, because I can relate somewhat to the conflict, which I think is very painful actually to experience this, because it's absolutely true and beautiful, the idea that of course we have free will, and it feels very much as though we do. But as we know, in terms of the kind of the koshas, the feelings, thoughts, experiences are not actually who we are. So if we experience the idea that we have free will, we're experiencing it as an experience that is ego still.
Yes, it's only as ego, but we have this limited freedom of will and action.
Right, and
that is ultimately it will be found that this ego is non-existent. But we can't, though that's the ultimate truth. It's not our experience now. We seem to be very much this ego. We experience ourselves as this body, and we consequently experience this world. So we are in a state in which we seem to be an ego. We seem to be experiencing things. We seem to have likes and dislikes, desires and attachments, and so on. We seem to but in order to fulfill to satisfy our likes and dislikes, we feel we're able to act, to do things. So this is it's all part of the whole package. So long as
that's clear.
And as Bhagavan made clear, the ego only limits us. That is, as ego, our being seems to be limited. Now I'm this body. It was born some 70 years ahead in the past, and sometime in the future, next minute or next year or 10 years ahead, sometime it's going to die. So the lifetime of this body is limited in time. I seem to be this body, therefore I seem to be limited in time. Likewise in space, I occupy this space, I'm not in some other place. So there's so many limitations we impose upon ourselves by rising as ego. But though our being is limited in time and space, or seems to be limited in time and space, it's never... We never cease to exist. We have some being, even if it seems to be limited. Likewise, our awareness actually is infinite. It seems to be now limited. I'm aware of some things, I'm not aware of other things. Our happiness is infinite, but it seems to be now finite. We experience pleasures and we experience pain. Our love is infinite, but we now seems to be limited. Likewise, our freedom, our real nature is infinite freedom, because we alone are. There's nothing other than ourselves and nothing to limit our freedom. But when we rise as ego, our freedom seems to be limited. But just like rising as ego, because of rising as ego, we don't cease to be. We don't cease to be aware. We don't cease to experience some happiness at least, and we don't cease to experience love in some form or other. Likewise, we don't cease to be free albeit in a very limited form.
And would you, that's very clear, Michael. And there's lots of things that connect to that. And one of them would be the idea of this so-called reality, which we know, which is an unreality. It's a Maya,
Yeah.
it's a fiction, it's an appearance.
Yeah.
In a dream at night, we take ourselves to be an individual again, albeit a slightly different one than the one that apparently is speaking to you now.
Yeah.
And that character in the dream also does appear to have free will. Although when one wakes up, one realizes one didn't actually have free will at all. Things were done by the character that weren't really you.
Well, the term free will is a very imprecise term, because when we talk of free will, generally what people mean by free will is the freedom to do what they want. And often they take it to do what they want means also to get what they want. So that's why Bhagavan was more precise. Bhagavan didn't actually use any term that means free will. He spoke of Icha Swatantra, which means freedom of will, and Kriya Swatantra, which means freedom of action. And he often, because they go hand in hand, he often spoke of them collectively as Icha Kriya Swatantra, freedom of will and action. So the freedom of will, we have that freedom. I mean, if we analyze it deeply, as I explained earlier, vasanas are constantly rising in our mind. Innumerable vasanas. Every moment, so many vasanas are rising. And we are choosing which vasanas to be swayed by and which ones not to be swayed by. If we got a very gross outward going mind, we may not be aware of it. But the more we try to turn within, the more we become aware of how it is. We have that freedom to be swayed or not swayed by any vasana. Sometimes some vasanas are very strong and seem to overpower us. But they're strong only because we've so many times allowed ourselves to be swayed by them. So the vasanas we have at present are what we have ourselves have cultivated. So we who have cultivated them can also uncultivate them. So we do have freedom of will. And along with freedom of will goes freedom of action. Because if we want something, we make effort through mind, speech, and body for it. So we have that. These freedoms are limited, but if we didn't have any freedom, then, as I say, there would be no meaning at all in any spiritual teachings. So Bhagavan was very, very clear. We have freedom of will and action, Icha Kriya Swatantra. What many of his devotees couldn't understand is how. I mean, I don't understand why people had so much difficulty understanding this. I mean, Devaraja Mudliya was someone who often said that he asked Bhagavan about this so many times. Whenever Bhagavan explained it, it was clear to him. And then again, it would be unclear to him after some time. But if we think about it, that is, prarabdha determines all that we are to experience. Freedom of will and action determines what we want to experience and what we try to experience. But there's no conflict between these. In verse 19, when Bhagavan talks about the dispute as to which prevails, fate or will, that dispute arises only for those who don't understand that there's actually no conflict between them, because fate determines what we're to experience. Freedom of will determines what we want to experience. Freedom of action determines what we try to experience. So just as I say, just because I'm destined to live in poverty all my life doesn't stop me wanting to be rich, doesn't stop me trying to be rich. So there's no conflict between freedom of will and action on one hand and destiny on the other hand. In fact, destiny, the destiny is the fruit of our past use of our freedom of will and action. If we had no freedom of will and action, then we wouldn't be responsible for our karmas. then we experience the fruits of our karmas because we are responsible for those karmas, and we are responsible for them because we did those karmas by misusing our freedom of will and action.
And that freedom of will and action, which has been looked through a lens of, when people talk scientifically, of nature nurture, basically having a biological predisposition to certain things, which is we had no free will in deciding on our nature, our genes, and our conditioning. We had no say in that either.
But the genes come according to prarabdha.
Right.
But the prarabdha is tailor-made to suit our vasanas. That is, prarabdha is not a random allotment of the fruits of our past action. They're allotted by God in such a way that is the prarabdha is tailor-made to suit our present nature. Our present nature means our present set of vasanas. So that is, Bhagavan is doing all these things perfectly. He's doing all these things without doing anything. As he says in the 15th paragraph of Nana, all these things happen by the special nature of merely by the special nature of the presence of God. Isan Sanidana Visesha Matratal. So by the mere special nature of the presence of God, by his just being as he is, everything happens as it's meant to happen. Because he is infinite love, and that infinite love is what is driving the force that is driving all these things.
And this right now, which is happening, all of these things are also, they are, I mean, again, it goes back into the kind of predetermination fate thing, but this is appearing to happen just as what appears to happen in a dream. It's as real as in a dream. I could be speaking to you at night in a dream and I'd have no real way of determining the difference apart from this feels like a longer dream with a narrative structure that seems to have continuity, where dreams at night, you can't remember the waking state usually from the dream at night, but you can remember the dream at night from the waking state perspective.
No, do you forget your waking state? The dream at night seems to be a continuity of this waking state.
Yeah, but you don't remember. I don't remember in the dream at night the life that I'm living now, the character that I am now.
Don't you
but
remember?
Now I can remember characters I was last night when I was dreaming.
In dream, don't you remember your Tim? Don't you remember your parents? Don't you remember your wife? Don't you remember your children? Don't you remember your friends? Don't you remember the place where you live?
I'll see them in snippets in various iterations within dreams.
Yeah.
But the character that I'm speaking to now is not the same character that is appearing in the dream at night. That it's a kind of a mishmash. It's a fragmentary version. So characters appear in different ways, positive or negative.
It's essentially the same. That is, though the body, it's a different body, right? That is, if the body in dream is injured, it's not injured in the waking state, and vice versa. But the other sheaves are all the same. It's the same vasanas. And so it's the same, essentially it's the same character who's experienced, and how we would behave in the waking state is how we generally would behave in dream. So that is, the dreams we have at night are dreams within a dream. The whole of this life is one dream, and within that dream we have periods of sleep. I mean, this dream of this life is interrupted by periods of sleep, and the sleep is interrupted by periods of dreams, which seem to be a continuity of this waking life.
Absolutely, and the key point being that which never changes is the awareness of which all three appear within. The deep sleep zone, in which I appear to be not, because I am not. And when I am not, the world is not, and everything in it is not.
Yeah.
And then it appears to arise again. Then the game begins again.
The I that is not is in sleep is ego, which is the I that is identified with Tim. But the essence of that is, ego is that conflated awareness, I am Tim. But that the essence of ego is the I am, which is shining in all three states.
And one last thing, Michael, because you've been incredibly helpful again. what again, it kind of all kind of harks back to this kind of slight bizarre dilemma between this kind of free will thing, because very much again I've listened many things to you've said, and a lot of it comes down to the love we have to turn within. That's what is
what
lacking.
is love? Love is will.
Love is will.
Yes.
And the word that's often used, I think you use it yourself as well from time to time, is, and forgive me if I've misinterpreted this, the greater the effort we make using our free will, our freedom of will, will in actuality, maybe the word increase is not the correct word, but we give our greater chance of grace descending upon us by the efforts that are made in order to do the Satvasana rather than the Vishayas.
That is the effort we make is grace working through us. And
Right.
the effort we need to make is to yield ourselves to that grace more and more. When we rise as ego and go outwards, we are resisting grace. Grace is the power that is constantly pulling us back within. Or
Right,
Bhagavan said,
makes sense. Yeah.
It pulls from within and it pushes from outside. All
Because
the blows we get from life pushing us in, and from within it's pulling us. We have to yield ourselves to that. But even the will, even the liking to yield ourselves to that is also the work of grace.
I've just found from bitter personal experience over the last 10 years since I came into contact with Bhagavan's teachings and various other teachings as well, although Bhagavan's tend to, as you've often said, and I'm not just copying you, is the purest of the pure in terms of cutting to the chase. There isn't really anywhere else to go. Once you had exposure to Bhagavan, you really are kind of looking for something slightly diluted if you go anywhere else, which is that's very clear to me, and I know certainly as a devotee it is to you. And one of the things I've noted, and I find this quite alarming, which is that over the last 15 years, as I've become more familiar with Bhagavan's teachings, and I kind of look into them and abide in the self as much as one can, I do find that the sway of the vasanas and my ability to counteract them, so to speak, has become incredibly much more difficult than it ever had before, which seems bizarrely ironic and very concerning to me.
Well, it's not this is natural, because when our mind is very outgoing, the vasanas are driving us hither and thither, but we're not so aware of them because of our mind being outgoing. When we try to turn our mind within, we become more and more aware of the sway that these vasanas hold over us. So it's not that the vasanas have greater hold over us now than they had in the past. It's just that we become more aware of the hold that they've always had over us.
It makes it feel as well, I don't know if you can relate to this in any way, Michael, but it's almost a feeling like innately, intuitively, I think there's always been a knowing that what is said is true. There's a truth to Bhagavan that I know is true. There's truth, but I feel like I'm trying to hedge my bet sometimes by pretending I don't know what I know, if that makes ignoring, not ignorance, but ignorance. And that's where the bitter pain is absolutely becoming more and more palpable, because of there's no excuses now, and yet that is making it worse. And with grace, I hope that this is a phase that is navigated for me, and with people like yourselves help, I pray that it is.
Well, to a greater or lesser extent, we are all ignoring Bhagavan's teachings. Every time we rise as ego and go outwards, we're ignoring his teaching, because his teaching is there's no happiness outside, happiness lies within. But this is the power of these vasanas. But however powerful our vasanas are, whatever power they have is power that we have endowed them with, the power they seem to have. So we who have endowed with that power can, by patient and persistent practice, derive them of the power of that power. Slowly. I mean, this is Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, verse 25, sane. I mean, slowly, gradually, that is it. So that doesn't mean we should be slow about this. We should be very earnest about this, but we need to recognize that this mess that we are in now is a mess that we've entangled ourselves in over countless lives. And so we have to be patient to slowly extricate ourselves from this entanglement, the
Absolutely, Michael.
entanglement of our vasanas.
Yeah,
So we have to be patient with ourselves. But we need to have that confidence. Bhagavan is always, whatever help we need is always being provided by Bhagavan. It's the deficiency is only on our part. There's never a deficiency of grace. The deficiency is our willingness to yield ourselves to his grace.
that's it. That's what, and I wish everyone well on that quest.
Well,
You know,
yes,
we're all in good hands.
We're all in good hands. And
Thank
we're
you,
all
Michael.
very much in the same boat.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And I know it's not you I'm thanking, of course. You're just a conduit for Bhagavan. However, if you are real, I say thank you to you.
Okay. Well,
Thank
I
you,
hope
Michael.
I'm not real. As the one you're saying thank you to.
Bless you. I hope I'm not real also.
Michael, there is one more question, which apparently Ilana thought she'd sent in by email, but it's here. Do we have time to answer it?
Okay, let's not.
Okay. In the last satsang, in answer to a question about whether taking human birth has any value, you said that no, it does not. But you've also said that during sleep, we aren't gaining any spiritual progress because ego is absent. So, would it not follow that taking human birth does have value because the ego is present? And therefore, while in the body, we have an opportunity to negate ego, allowing it to subside and practicing self-investigation so that we no longer rise as ego.
Okay, I can't remember exactly the context in which I said human birth has no value. I think I assume that what I was saying is there's no value in rising as ego. It's only when we rise as ego that we take a human body or any other body as I. So there's no value in that. But since we have risen as ego, we need to we need to use the opportunity that we have to subside back within, rather than perpetuating this samsara by continuing to engage in extroverted activities of one kind or another. We need to try our best to turn the mind within. So it's not that there's an intrinsic value in having a human birth. It's just that we have a human birth because we've risen as ego. And because we've risen as ego, we're in a mess and we need to get ourselves out of this mess. And the way out of this mess is by turning our attention within to find out, who am I? So I hope that resolves any seeming conflict there may have been in what I said. Is that a clear answer?
I think it was a clear answer.
Right.
Thank you very much, Michael. And thank you everyone for attending today. And Michael, we really had a wonderful session as always.
All right.
And so we'll close
Well,
the
we did
satsang.
better than last time. Last time many questions we weren't able to answer. So I think
Yes,
we've
today
done a
there
bit
were
better.
fewer questions. Yeah, I mean, it was much more sort of tempered.
Yeah.
So we'll close with Bhagavan's mantra. We'll do it together. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya.